What we're going to be discussing tonight are Nayawin Rar Lodge 296 Vigil Medallions. So this is something that I was kind of involved in the very beginning, carrying through to current, and we're just going to kind of go through the whole process. This is kind of, for me, it's almost kind of a walk down memory lane kind of thing, something that was very close to my heart in, kind of when I was on my way more or less out as a youth in scouting, coming, starting to be an adult, and just really had a good experience overall through the whole process. So first I want to show this. So it's like, wait, when did we make this? There in 2003 we had a conclave. This was before I was in the OA. I got in the OA as an ordeal in fall of 2007. In 2003 we had a conclave, and I was going back. I actually wrote a book for collecting our lodge's memorabilia, and I was trying to find all the stuff that we'd made. And we had made a Vigil coin from that year. Then one day somebody goes, Larry, well, you don't have this, and shows me this. And I think, oh my gosh, I've never seen that before. It must be super rare and valuable. So of course I buy it for a pretty good amount of money, and then turn around and people are like, we don't remember that. We really don't remember it. And come to find out that somebody not from our lodge, when we were hosting conclave that year, at least this is what I've come to understand, is that somebody not from our lodge made these. I believe they also made these at some Virginia conclaves. I think I've seen this same exact thing, but from some Virginia conclaves. So just want to kind of let you know that this, to me, doesn't really fall into even though it's a similar item, doesn't really fall into the category of the other pieces. So the beginning, I got my ordeal 2007, got Brotherhood 2009, and then 2013, I got Vigil. So there's a picture of me, Phil Losky, Ian Pageant, who was heavily involved in AIA, and a couple other people that got Vigil in 2013. I'm not going to really go into details or anything on the ceremony, but there are some things that are pertinent to the story of why things developed quite the way they did, that has to do with me getting Vigil and where our lodge was at. So when I got Vigil, our lodge was really kind of at a point where almost all of the old leadership was, kind of graduating high school, already in first year of college. And really after 2013, they were gone. 2014, 15, all the people who had been kind of the older leadership in the lodge, they were all gone. And that included youth vigils. So I got Vigil in 2013. Phil stayed on as an advisor, and Ian kept doing lodge ceremony team. Josh Bevel was gone, and Eli, they were basically gone after 2013. So kind of because I was there, suddenly I'm Vigil chief. And I've never done anything with ceremonies ever before. Here's Ian. He's on the left in both photos. And he was really concentrating on doing everything with the lodge and, ceremony team and everything with the lodge. So he didn't have time to do Vigil chief because he was doing lodge stuff on our fellowship weekends. So like I said, I kind of by default became the Vigil chief, as really the only youth vigil left and willing to do it when they told me, you're doing this. So my first time that I was Vigil chief was in 2014. Every year, normally, we do all of our vigils in the fall. So in fall fellowship, that's when we do them. It is pretty miserable to do them in the spring because in the spring, usually by that time, about March, you already have mosquitoes and bugs coming in. And when we do them in the fall, our fall fellowship used to always be like the last weekend or third weekend of October. And by that time, it was cold enough that most of the bugs were dead, so you didn't have to worry about them. It also tends to be wetter in the spring. But so on the left, that was our first Vigil class, 2 people, Brian Robinson and Chuck Robinson. And Stephen Freen, who was our section chief, actually showed up, and he actually helped me doing stuff during Vigil that year. And on the right is Gary Gray. And Gary kind of became co-advisors with Pam Rooks and really helped me do everything with Vigil. He is from Shinshapatu. He did his vigil there, and they were really big into ceremonies in Shinshapatu. And he really wanted to do more than what our lodge was currently doing with vigil. Now on the right is Josh Tracy, and he couldn't make, I think he had something with band, he couldn't make the 2014 vigil class. Before that, we were kind of the attitude of if you missed it, you missed it. But I kind of changed that. I said, well, we need youth vigils. At this point, it was basically 2 of us active in the lodge. And so we got Josh in, and Ian had started helping me do some of the vigil ceremonies as he was starting to pass on doing lodge-related ceremony. And Josh actually started helping us as well. So that was in 2015 spring. Now, you may notice my arm is in a very poorly done sling. There is a story behind that. So I was walking out of the library at college, the Friday of fellowship, and in a very big rush. And I learned a very important life lesson about being in a rush. There's a little brick wall, like 1.5 feet, 2 feet high. And instead of walking about 5 feet to my right to go around it where it opens up, I just stepped over it because I was in a rush and I didn't want to walk 5 feet to my right. Well, there's a little lip on the bricks and I caught my foot on it and fell right over the wall. I fell on both of my forearms. My left arm hurt pretty daggone bad. And it was a pretty hard enough tumble that everyone there at college stopped and was looking at me. So I got up and I'm holding my arm. I get to my dorm room to get my stuff to leave for fellowship, and I had a first aid kit. So I grabbed a big old triangle bandage and made myself a sling, go to the scout office, pick up the stuff for the trading post, go out to fellowship, do all that. Doug Lamb, who's in medical field, came out, and I said, "Hey, Doug, take a look at my arm." He looked at it, he poked it, said, "Yeah, you need an x-ray," which it turned out I had broken my elbow. But I still did vigil. After we got that done, the next day I went and got some x-rays, and they said, "Yeah, you broke your elbow." But so that's kind of the story behind that. So Gary and I were doing all the ceremony stuff for vigil. We're getting ready for conclave. And then somebody says, "Well, you have to have gifts for the vigil rededication." And we're like, "Well, that's a section thing." And they're like, "No, the lodge makes the gifts and give them out." We're a very small lodge and don't have a large operating budget. And I was kind of sitting there going, man, we've got to pay to give out for the 2015 100th anniversary. We're expecting 400 plus vigils. We've got to have something to give out to them. Man, this is going to cost us a fortune. You got to remember, our normal lodge budget in a year was probably $1,500. And we had over 1,500 people at conclave that year. And we had about 400 vigils come through. So anyways, what I wanted to do is I wanted to do a triangle like what Clehecan did. And so I'd seen them do it before. I'd been to one of their vigil ceremonies. It was really cool. So we started coming up with prototypes. So these are both prototypes that Gary started hand burning in 2015. And it was basically, do you like the one with the cardinal head or do you like the one with the cardinal standing up? I thought the one with the cardinal head was a little simpler. I liked it better. So then we started playing around. He had a CNC machine at his work. So he started playing around doing all sorts of wood burnings. And so these are a couple of the different types where he was testing them on different woods, on birch and balsam and everything, and trying to figure out the design. Well, you can see on the upper left, that birch, you can see that we were having problems when we ran the design and it burned it. This wood was so light that it was actually, it was looking pretty bad. We couldn't figure out. So we came up with a solution, and that was to put painter's tape over the wood, and then we could burn it. And you'll see in that lower right hand, when you just peel the painter's tape off, and it protected, other than right where the laser or whatever, where it was cutting, it protected the rest of the area. So it gives it a really nice, clean look. So, and at this point we were thinking, okay, we're going to probably make all these 400 some things ourselves. Well, we realized that was really a little more than we could, do. Here's some more little tests where we were testing them. He was running them with the CNC machine at Grifols. So then we knew a guy that did really good quality wooden etch stuff for wood badge. And so we reached out to C Stories and that individual. Now his were much thicker than the wood we were doing ours on. They looked really good. He did us one with more of a straight arrow, and he did us one with more of a detailed arrow. I liked the plainer arrows. The only problem is we needed so many of them, and I was dirt cheap. And it was phenomenal quality. I just was cheap, and I didn't really want to pay the price per piece times 400. So we found an outfit out in New York. And I will say, I don't think it's quite as nice quality, but it was good enough for us. And the guys up in New York charged us, oh my gosh, they were cheap. They were like $1 a piece to make them. I mean, just phenomenal. Now, they came to us like the one on the upper left. They came just with the hole in them and everything. The only problem was that when they ran their boards through, they ran them through knots and all. So when they sent us our quantity we ordered, we got ones that had knots and ugly looking, some wood looks bad. Some of them looked bad. We brought up the issue. They said, oh, don't worry about it. They sent us, it was an odd number replacement batch, but it was, I guess, whatever one board makes. They sent us that. So we ended up with 441, and we had 22 that looked really bad, and we destroyed the 22 that looked really bad because we didn't want people to see them. Now, then we had to get them on some sort of string or something. So we went to Michael's. Me and my mother picked up this string, and then my grandmother and her entire bridge party had these little metal rings, and we put the little metal rings on them and strung them and tied them off. And we did that for all 441. And then Gary, I handed them over to Gary, and he decided he wanted to hand number them. So he hand numbered all of them with a number on the back, just with a little hand thing. And on the lodge ones, he added the lodge name to them, which kind of surprised me, but I was like, oh, that's cool. And I think all of those, I think we donated all the ones other than our lodge one to the section auction that year, and they auctioned them off. I think that's what we did, if I remember right. Now, the 2015 Conclave team, there were 3 of us. It was me, Ian, and Josh. And so Gary kind of surprised us. When we had originally been doing designs, we had thought about doing the lodge totem in the middle. So we talked about using the R1, which is my favorite patch from our lodge, and using that bird. But we decided to go with the cardinal because we thought the cardinal, which were the cardinal conclave, represented the section better for a section vigil rededication. So surprisingly, Gary came up to me, Josh, and Ian at the vigil rededication that we put on for 400 people, and gave all of us our own custom vigil medallion. And he hand did all of our vigil names on the back of our own vigil medallion, which I thought was very nice of him. So he gave us those, and that was a really interesting as far as the, that vigil. We had we had it all planned out where they'd come in, they'd form a big circle, and then we'd do the rededication. And we lit up all the lights and the candles and did everything. Well, we had so many people coming in that by the time, like as they were coming in, I would shake their hand and I'd give them the rededication medallion. I'd hang it on them, and just so many coming in. But by the time they all got in, like all the candles were like guttering. So it was kind of interesting. Oh, the other thing that happened at that vigil medallion, or that vigil rededication, is that I went to get my regalia, the same regalia that's our Alawat Sakima regalia of our lodge. I went to go get it from the lodge building, and it was gone. It was not there. And Larry Lane, who had never done ceremony before he was a vigil chief, did not have his own regalia. And the Alawat Sakima regalia was gone. We found out one of the scouters who was having some issues at the time with the lodge and everything, had taken it home, and he had not come to Conclave. And so I had to borrow Ian, who was much smaller than me, second set of regalia. It worked out very well, but it was not how I expected things to go when I was getting ready for it, 15 minutes, 20 minutes before we started prepping. So then 2015 Fall Fellowship comes along, and we thought, we'd really like to do these medallions more. We'd like to do some more of them. We'd like to give them out to people when they get Vigil. And to anybody who comes to the Vigil ceremony, and anyone who comes to the, we always have a Vigil breakfast after a Vigil night. So anybody who comes to that, we'd like to make these and kind of turn it into something that we make them whenever we do a Vigil. So we said, okay. And so we made the first one. Really, at that time, you're talking about 3-4 active member youth vigils. You're talking about maybe a dozen adult vigils that were active. And so the first quantity, I think we made 30. We may have only made 25, but we made 30 or somewhere in there. Gary did them all on that CNC machine. And that's how they turned out, with the anniversary logo in the middle, 2015 Fall Fellowship. That's the 2015 Vigil class. A lot of good friends in there. Our lodge chief, camp ranger. I mean, just, Mike Pageant. Lot of good friends. Barbara Byers. Just every person in that photo is a true friend. 2016 comes along, and things are a little bit different in that we said, well, we kind of already were projecting problems when these were being made about that we might have to have more than one ceremony that year and everything. And we didn't want to make 2 medallions that year if we had to have 2 different vigils. So 2016, we said, yeah, just make it one, put the totem in the middle, put 2016 on it. And Gary said we made 60. Because I had to ask him for some of this information. I thought we only made 50, but maybe we made 60. I don't remember. I know that's bad. It was only a couple years back, but I just don't remember. So this was 2016 Vigil, and it was in the spring, and that was a rough weekend because I was helping out with Vigil. Dylan took over as Vigil chief. Ian was helping him, and I got no sleep Friday night, and then I got no sleep Saturday night. I think Saturday we had to run out. We had a pie contest going, and the cooks forgot to buy the whipped cream and some stuff, and pie shells. So me and Dylan had to run out Saturday night and get them, and it turned into a long ordeal. So Sunday morning at the LEC meeting, I fell asleep, and they just let me sleep through the whole thing. But they did take a picture of it, so that's what that is on the left, is me sleeping through the entire executive committee meeting. Oh, and so those were this was 2016 spring, which we had 2 guests from the section. That's who in the upper left. And then we inducted 2 youth on the right. And then we had some more vigils in the fall. Now, 2017, this is where I could tell a lot of the things that we had started doing. We had kind of changed what our lodge ceremony was. We had started, really trying to have some cohesiveness as a group of vigils in the lodge, really emailing people, making sure, hey, you're going to be at Vigil ceremony. It was really, there had not been a real expectation of every lodge vigil needed to be at the early morning Vigil ceremony. That had not really been a massive expectation. And we really started pushing that, and that they need to be at Vigil breakfast. You're going to be there, right? You're going to be there. So we started having a lot more youth involved, adults involved. It was really nice. We had people willing to help set up all the Vigil sites and do everything. I mean, it was really nice. So in this one, 2017, very similar to 2016, still made 60 of them. Some of them did not come out quite, the laser didn't burn quite right or dark enough. So he had to go in and he tried to hand touch them a little bit. So some of them will have a little bit of a different look. And he went in on some of the yellow moons and colored in the moon just as kind of he showed them to me and said, well, what do you think? Should we try to paint them, or should we try to do some color, or should we try to do? And I thought, man, that's going to be a lot of work to do that for all of them. And I said, Gary, I think they look really good the way they were. So that's the only one that has color on it is any of the ones he retouched with the yellow on the moon. Now, 2017, I do need a photo of the Vigil class. I swear, me and Gary both could not believe we didn't have a photo of the entire Vigil class. I don't know what happened that year, but we just didn't have it. Now, Kyle sent me a photo. He was kind of a unique case probably in our whole lodge history of what was going on with him and everything with Vigil. So he was on Philmont's staff, and he was gone. He was gone for our spring, and he was gone for fall, and he did get home for Thanksgiving, and so we had out at the Myers farm, they had a vigil ceremony just for him to let him get through. But then we had the other vigils are all named there on the right. They had theirs at the regular fall fellowship. Now 2017, Gary had been a vigil for 40 years at that point, and so he on one that he gave to me. I don't know how many others he gave out to people, but he actually on mine he hand burnt on the back 40 years have I wandered and his vigil name, and then when he got his vigil 1977 to 2017. Now 2018 is a bit of a divergence from the norm. So in 2017 Gary stopped being able to use the I keep calling it a CNC machine. I think that's what it is, but it's the laser etching machine thing at Griffles. So he chatted with somebody at Edwards, and they made a metal one. Now, personally, the choice of using wood as a medium for these was very intentional when I started these. These were really intended as friendship items, as things that would be of significance to vigils in the lodge who got them when they went through. And if you go to every vigil ceremony and every breakfast, you get the one from that year, and people sometimes wear them or wear theirs or wear more than one. I mean, it's it was not meant to be something that would make I knew that if we did something limited and if we made it out of leather or metal, we might run into people saying, well, that's a lodge leather issue or that's a lodge metal issue and all that stuff, and I didn't really want that. So that's why the original ones all the way up to this point were made out of wood. This one, I was at college in the middle of everything, and this one, the decision got made to make this one this way, and I had no involvement in it. And I was very surprised when I got it. I'll be honest, it looks really nice. It really does look nice, and I yeah, it's very cool. But Edwards, local company, they donated all of them. Really nice that they did so. That's the 2018 Vigil class. They're all there. Once again, a lot of wonderful friends. And then 2019, so we went back to C Stories, who had done those original prototypes for us for 2015 when we were trying to use them. That they did amazingly good quality work. So once again, since Gary couldn't continue making them, the lodge was ordering them from C Stories. So that was the 2019 one. There's the 2019 Vigil class. And so then this one was also produced by C Stories in 2020. This is a little bit different because it was the 75th anniversary of the lodge. So they put 1945 to 2020 on there, 75th anniversary. And RWP stood for Rick Pridgeon. Rick was a really good friend to a lot of members in the lodge. And I'll share one Rick story real quick. One time I was out at NYLT, and we had a nice event out there and everything, and we needed somebody to come in and to do a game for the NYLT course. And we was like, well, we need someone to come in, and we want them to be real measured and be able to handle the room and do everything. And we said, okay, so why don't we do Rick? I said, oh, well, I'll call him. And they said, okay. And Rick was also really good. Another reason we had to talk to him about it was he was on the Wayne County Board of Education stuff, and he would get them where it was not counted against them for them being out of school for a scouting event. But anyways, I go over to Rick's house, and we're talking about scouting stuff, and he goes, well, Larry, have you had supper? And I was like, well, no. And he says, well, sit down. And he pulled me right on in and sat me down and had supper with him and everything. And it's just, he was the type of person that if you ever needed anything or ever, wanted someone to talk to or anything, you knew he was there for you. The other thing, and this just kind of once again just shows his, a real willingness to give. We needed to redo the ceremony stones at the lodge ceremony ring. Somehow they got broken. But anyway, so we needed to redo them, and we had a big meeting, and they were like, look, we think it's going to cost this much money. It's going to cost this. It's going to cost this. Well, Rick worked at a funeral home, and did all that. And I said, well, why don't we ask Rick if he can get them for us cheap? If through his contacts, maybe we can get them cheap. So I left, and I called Rick, and I said, this is what's going on. He said, oh, I'll get them for you. I said, well, just tell us, if you can get them for us cheaper. He said, oh, no. He said, I'll get them, and I'll just give them to you. So he ordered beautiful, big, nice, ceremony ring stones and everything, and donated them to the lodge. They're gorgeous. So that was the 2020 Vigil class. And I'll be honest, it's kind of hard to tell who everybody is with the mask. I can recognize most people, but it was funny. I was like, wait a second, that's me. I forgot I was standing there behind Pam and Bill Hardy over to the left. But so that was 2020. And it was also, I think it was 2020. I'm pretty sure it was 2020. It may have been 2021, but that was our first Vigil service day out at camp. We'd been wanting to have one for a while. It was somewhere right in there, but we started having a Vigil work day out at camp. We're looking at doing it again sometime later this year. Sometimes it's hard to work in with all the council calendar stuff, but I thought that was a really good exercise for get all the Vigils out there, have a nice weekend. Everybody can kind of catch up with each other and kind of, once again, building cohesiveness as a group that then we can give service back to the lodge and help promote lodge activities and everything else, So then in 2021, we'd had 2 lodge members pass away. Marty Cheddar passed away, and Hogan Moore. Now, Hogan was the camp ranger out there since I could ever remember, up till his retirement. I mean, he was out there forever and just always doing stuff in the background. Marty came in. He was originally in Crotan Lodge. He did a lot of things. He started OA Trail Crew out at Philmont. And he came in, and he was our lodge advisor for several years. But the 2021 Vigil Medallion, they were produced. It's the same company, but they changed their name, I think. They changed it to WB Critters and relocated to Mount Airy. And then this was the 2021 Vigil class, so they were all out there. And we actually had it. We got all the paperwork and stuff and got it submitted and everything kind of late. So we didn't have it until the 2021 class until January 2022. Now 2022 Conclave comes along. And at this point, I was kind of, I won't say out of the loop. I mean, I was still there if they needed me to do anything, but it was a whole new batch of youth had really taken over. We had a lot of adults who were willing to help. So it wasn't like I had to be involved in every single thing like it was in the very beginning, 2015, 16, 17. So, which I think is good. I think that's wonderful how far we've come from having, 2 youth vigils to now, we've got a very strong group of vigils active in the lodge. What happened with this is Gary was in charge of all the design work and everything. He did a really good job, I thought, with the vigil rededication patch. So we had 350 of those made. We handed them out to all the vigils, and then the next day we took the extras and we put them in the trading post and let anybody buy them if they wanted them. I had to come up with a price. I said, well, let's do $5. Now, the one on the left, I didn't know about that until after I got home and checked my pockets from Conclave. So those got made up, and they say on them SR-7B 2022 Conclave and have our totem. And they were given out to all the vigils involved in putting on vigil rededication. Well, you say, well, Larry, if you got it at vigil rededication, how did you not know that you got it? Well, because I was busy. I didn't realize. So this is some pictures of what happened. And so we had a lot of, like I said, we had a lot of vigils between 2016, 17, really getting started up to current, who have really become active in the lodge, really willing to help, is really wonderful. However, that means they haven't hosted a conclave before. And and I got over there. I got over there about an hour before vigil rededication was supposed to start, and nothing was set up yet. And I go, guys, we got to set up like now. And they're like, it doesn't start for an hour. We'll start setting up 30 minutes out. We don't want to leave the food and everything out too long. I said, no, you don't understand. They put it on the schedule. They put it at whatever time they put it. But as soon as the show's over, they send them here. So they always show up 30 minutes early or so. So I said, we've got to get this going now. And so I was like, you do this, you do this, you do this. Because Gary and all the youth vigils and people involved in the ceremony part, they were doing their own thing. So I started getting on the food. So we had 300, 400 slices of cake. And we started cutting cake and putting it on. And we had some tables behind us as well. And we were plating them on there. So when they came through the line, we could just cycle them over. And Andy Stevens is on the very end. Longtime supporter of the lodge, in the lodge as a youth and adult for a long, long, long time, over in Croatan now, but just like a lodge member really. And so so it was a little different this time though. Most vigil rededications we do the rededication first and then the food. This time they kind of flopped it on us, which surprised me a little bit, but we did the food and then everybody sat down. And then they kind of ate for a bit, and then they did the rededication part after everybody had kind of sat down and could chat and rest their feet for a few minutes. It worked out really well. I liked the rededication ceremony they did. You can see a snapshot of it on the left. I thought they did a real good job. But so, all this happened, and then the rededication, so all that goes on, the prep and all that. And then we got to clean up, and cleaning up after a couple hundred people come through and eat real quick and do everything. You're spending an hour doing that. Well, at some point in there, Gary comes up to me. He was trying to grab everybody. He comes up and, Larry, here, thanks so much for coming and helping. Thanks for, and he shook my hand. And when he shook my hand, he stuck something in my hand. And it was, fairly dark around there and everything. So I just, I felt it was something in my hand stuck in my pocket. Well, it was that Vigil medallion. And I didn't even realize it until I got home. I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad it didn't get washed, but so that was kind of cool. And that's the end of the presentation. I know that for you guys that was probably very long, and I really appreciate you guys sticking through it. I could talk about our lodge vigil stuff for hours and hours and hours and hours. So Joe had said that his mic wasn't working, but he did put a question in chat. Do you have a script for the rededication ceremony? The answer is yes. The lodge has a script. I don't personally have the script from this last rededication one. I'm trying to think if I have the one still from 2015. I probably have it somewhere in all my paperwork. But we did very different ceremonies. And we've done a variety. Over the years, we have tried a variety of different ceremonies. And that goes whether it's vigil call out, the vigil call out ceremony, unless it's changed, and I don't think it. We kind of do our own thing now, but the national vigil call out ceremony was not very much of, you form a triangle, you call them in, and then it just like ends. The ceremony just ends, and the first time a vigil chief ever does it, they're standing there and they're reciting their lines and they end, and then everybody's still standing there and they're triangle and you got them in the middle and you don't know what to say to break everybody up. It drops off oddly. I've never liked the vigil call out from national. But anyway, we've done our own. When we had some people doing drum, we had all sorts of things where the drum would beat and the chief would go around. You'd call the whole lodge out. And the chief would go around and pull them into the triangle. There was all sorts of stuff that we've done. If anybody would like to discuss vigil ceremonies or ideas for vigil ceremonies or something like that, if it's something you want to do in your lodge, I'll put my email in the chat. And feel free to shoot me an email, and I can tell you some of what we've done. And Gary probably, I probably do too somewhere. But we probably can get you some scripts of some of the stuff we've done. Now, on the vigil ceremony in the morning, we stick pretty much to the national script. We don't really deviate from that. But we do some aesthetic things that are kind of nice.
looking at all these Vigil certificates, I did that last version of the Vigil certificates in the 80s because apparently they ran out of Vigil certificates. The company that once engraved them no longer existed. And I was asked to redo it because from that point forward, they were going to put it in when the certificate was made, they were going to put it in a machine that would print out the name of who you were and your Vigil name at the national office. Before that time, they had to put it in by hand. So I had to do new artwork, and I actually have the artwork of the lettering, the curved lettering. It all had to be done by hand. And then I had to choose a type style that existed so they could put in the paragraph along with the Vigil name. So seeing all those people with the certificates brings back memories.